Hello and welcome back to Finger Guns with Tony, Dave, and James. I am Dave Baldwin, your fearless co-host, and I am here with
Big T, Tony B.
And it's another one of those where James is off today.
He's bringing home the bacon because somebody has to.
It's true.
We're just, we're just a bunch of degenerates here at the Finger Guns podcast, and all we do is watch movies here.
That's true. It's true. And James, we love you.
James, we love you, and you're in our hearts always.
He didn't die.
No, he didn't.
What the hell's wrong with you?
Honestly, I'm I don't know where I was going with that.
Anyways, this is another one of our interview episodes, which you probably knew from clicking on it. And today we had the pleasure and the privilege to speak to Canadian writer-director Lowell Dean, who directed a film called Dark Match, which is out in cinemas across Canada on January 31st. This was a film we saw at Fantasia.
Fantasia, yeah, we did.
We did, and it's about a group of wrestlers in the 80s who are called up to do a so-called dark match, which is one of those matches that isn't televised. And they actually are unwittingly participating in a satanic ritual.
As you do.
As you do. It's it's pretty graphic.
It goes to some pretty dark places. It's super violent. You'll remember some of other films that Lowell has done. One of my personal favorites, Wolf Cop, and another Wolf Cop. Another Wolf Cop. Those were bangers, and I'm so happy that I got to tell him how much I love those two movies.
Yes, we did get to talk to Lowell, and we mentioned, we obviously got to talk to him, but we got to tell him about our love of Wolf Cop, so that was fun. So the film stars Aisha Issa in the lead, as well as Stephen Ogg, who you would know from
Grand Theft
Auto 5, Jonathan Cherry, who is pretty much Lowell's, his
muse.
His lucky charm.
Yeah.
His lucky charm.
He's given another typical performance, and he's definitely one to watch in this one
for sure. And Chris Jericho
too, yeah, in a role that you would not expect.
Yeah, he's really fucking good.
He's so good in it.
Yeah, really fucking creepy, really evil.
He gets under your skin in a different way, because I know he liked to get under people's skins when he was a wrestler. When he was the Ayatollah of rock and rolla, and this time he's fucking creepy.
He doesn't put anybody in the walls of Jericho.
No, he doesn't, and I feel like that was a missed opportunity. But he does a whole other shit in this movie that will blow your mind.
Yeah. So we had a blast talking to Lowell, and we had a blast watching this movie. So you should definitely check it out. And without further ado, here is our conversation with Mr. Lowell Dean.
Enjoy, everybody.
Hi, Lowell. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Congratulations on the film. I just wanted to know what was the genesis of the film? Was it why did you set it in the 80s?
I set it in the 80s. Well, the genesis was I went to a wrestling match. I rediscovered a love for it, and being an outsider, someone who's coming back to wrestling, I didn't know any of the characters. I didn't know any of the walkout songs or anything, and I just suddenly felt like I'd walked into a cult because everybody was chanting in unison, and they all knew words I didn't know, and they had catchphrases. So I literally felt like I'd snuck into a cult, and that was my light bulb moment. And then I just said in the 80s because that's when I first fell in love with wrestling, and it also felt like it was right for the time and the place, and also it was the height of satanic panic, and this movie is kind of a smashing of the occult and wrestling. So both of those things for me were very peak in the 80s.
That's great. Did you have any specific wrestlers in mind when you were creating the characters? Do you have any inspirations for your characters wrestling wise?
Not specific, like this person represents that or this person represents this. It was more like personality type. Like I knew I wanted heels to be my heroes in this movie. I knew I wanted, the baby faces to be just like secondary because I thought it was more interesting to focus on people who are used to being like told like you suck. And I also, so in terms of those character dynamics, um, it was more just like the types of wrestlers I had seen. You have to have the swagger character. I wanted Mean Jolene to be someone who was like just like kind of cakewalking through it. Like he knows he's not going to make the big leagues at this point, so he's just like giving people what they want and try not to really break a sweat. And I wanted Miss to be the opposite. Miss Behave to be someone who really like giving her all and is furious at maybe the time and the place she's in will never let her be the real hero, right?
Yeah.
And manager, I wanted Rusty to be like your expected like sleazy manager of wrestling, but I'm sure you wouldn't have to look too hard to find those types. And other than that, the rest is just filled out with like just vibes, characters, feelings. Other than Enigma, who is really important to me, I always knew that I love in movies and comics and everything when there's a character who barely speaks or a character who like the Chewbacca in Star Wars, who's like you love them as much as you love any other character, but you're like they don't have to say a damn word. They raise an eyebrow. They're here. They're there. So Enigma was the character I thought a lot about.
That's awesome. Nice.
He is a great character. He was definitely my favorite character, other than the sleazy promoter. I liked
Rusty.
Him as well.
Rusty cracks me up.
How much training did the actors have to go through in order to do the scenes?
It was a mix. First and foremost, we selected people for their roles based on their experience level, right? So there were certain characters like Thick and Thin and Enigma and Kid Humble, and we were like, these have to be wrestlers because these are people who they say one or two lines in the script, but the majority of their work is fighting, right? Aisha Issa, who plays Misbehave, was the toughest to cast because there was no hiding around the fact that she had to be a good actor because she's carrying the movie, right? But then also she has multiple fight scenes, so she has to be more than passable at fighting. So that was a tough nut to crack in terms of casting. But then there were other roles where we're like, let's go actor first. So Mean Jolene, it was all about swagger to me. So I wanted like someone who hopefully could fight, but more than anything, like were smoldering. And if we like had a close up of them, it was like Kurt Russell in the 80s, in like a John Carpenter movie where you're like, this guy means business. Like, so that's what I was going for with Stephen Hogg's character, Mean Joe. And Sarah Canning, I looking really hard at the script. I'm like, Kate the Great has a lot to do in terms of personality. She has to be, show a few different sides of herself, but by and large, she has to present as a really bubbly, friendly person, but we have to see behind that too. So realized a strong actor was the most important thing. So we went with Sarah Canning, who's great.
Yeah. How did Chris Jericho become involved in the project?
We reached out to him. We knew a movie like this, the producers, I should say. This movie doesn't work if you don't have the credibility of the wrestling world. I mean, it could, in theory. We could have gotten some actor and not had any fighting, but I love movies that work on multiple layers. And I thought, like, it would have been a missed opportunity to me if we made a movie like this and didn't have one superstar wrestler in there somewhere, But I also didn't want to be a very winky movie. So it was like, let's get Chris Jericho, but he's not being Chris Jericho. He's being this character, the Prophet. And we're going to strip him down from all the things he's known for in his career as a professional wrestler. And let's focus on there's just enough there that when he says his speeches or his long commentaries on the world of wrestling, it gives it a bit of fun, I think, subtext or underlying something. But he's mostly just there to be a strong, intimidating performer.
Yeah, and I saw that. Like, when I saw that Chris Jericho was casted in this, I was expecting the Ayatollah of rock and roll, very eccentric character. And then when he comes up, he's like very like, so he's almost like silent. He's creepy. He's like getting under your, he's getting under your skin, but he's not getting under your skin like the way you expect him to. And I thought that was really awesome.
Great. Yeah, no, we worked hard on that.
Amazing. And is Jonathan Cherry like your lucky
guy.
your guy, like your horseshoe, like
diamond? He kind of is. I mean, I will say, Jonathan Cherry, I think this is like our 5th movie together. It might be our 5th, and he's just good. I find him to be really funny, and much like in the world of improv, it's like yes and Jonathan Cherry, whether the role is very strongly written or not, he comes so prepared, and he always has something to offer. And sometimes he'll just fully stay to the script, and sometimes we'll all just kind of feel something's not working, and he'll be like, I have 3 things I could stay here instead. And usually one of them will be better than anything I've written. So yeah, I love working with him.
That's great. I have a question. What was your most challenging scene to film? You had a lot of intricate lighting setups throughout the whole movie. Was that always something that you planned for, or was that something you figured out on the day?
Nothing was figured out on the day. I worked with director of photography Kareem Hussein, and he's a meticulous planner. And so he and I would, in prep, we were joined at the hip, planning every single shot and every single look and every single camera technique and trick. And it was a joy to work with him. It was really fun to get so deep and focused and not just throw things away and like, this would be cool. Everything in our movie has a design and a plan visually. And I think that's why I'm hoping that it really will connect with people, because I think you hear wrestling horror, you assume it's going to be, some kind of schlocky, jokey thing. We took it deadly serious. There is fun here to be had, but it's also, we're trying to make an actual, in quotes, film, So, and when you ask about the hardest thing to shoot, believe it or not, it wasn't anything to do with the ring or the fighting. That was all challenging, but we had a great team of people throwing their weight behind how it would work. The hardest part for me was we had 2 days outside and it was -40. And I've done that before on Wolf Cop. You try to never do it. You try and do it as little as possible, but it's inevitable. But what made this one worse is it's not just -40. Our actors are in spandex, like leotards, and they're actually just in that. So it became a game of preparing as best as we can, keeping people warm, working as a huddled unit that, there are people with blankets and every possible thing you could imagine. But a day like that, you don't feel like you're making a movie. You feel like you're fighting a battle, and so it wasn't fun. And you look back on it and you're like, we got it. Sure, it's fun. It adds character, but I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, that Alberta cold really, really gets to you, right?
It does. I mean, I'm from Saskatchewan, so it wasn't a shock to me, but it's also like, here we go, I don't worry about me in those moments. I worry only about the actors. I can put on ski pants.
Of course.
How did you come up with some of the ring gimmicks, or like I don't want to say gimmick, the different match types? Like there's the cage match. Like I know these are all going into different things. Like when you think of wrestling, I think of cage matches, but like some of them are really brutally violent. And how did you figure those out?
It was just an ongoing conversation with myself and others, and looking at the history of wrestling, looking how they build their cards. Like it has to build. It always has to build. You're going to have, in the 80s especially, you'll have your ladies match, you'll have your tag team, you'll have at some point a cage match, some kind of gimmicky thing. So I had that on one side of my brain in a sheet of paper, and on the other side, I'm looking at occult rituals. I'm looking at how they design them, the 5 points of the pentagram. What would each of the 5 points represent? What are things that people, elemental, earth, wind, water, fire, spirit, etc. So it then just became a really fun game of like mixing and matching and trying to find something that worked in terms of this insane idea that characters would have for like some kind of hopeful occult ritual, but also matching that to what works for a story. Like how is this going to grow in intensity? I could have easily just blown it all in the first fight, been something super crazy. But it's like, let's just start modest. It's already intense enough that people are learning they might have to fight to the death. So what would be, you look at the next two and say, which one is scarier? How do I grow to the ultimate, right?
Did you have a favorite match that was your favorite to film?
Yeah, I would say the water match, because we talked about it so much, but up until the day, I'm naive, I guess. I didn't really think about the fact that, oh, we're going to be, having all these tubes of water and it's showering down and it's filling the ring and it's filling not just the ring and we have to squeegee it out. And it became like such a weird ordeal. And it was like, it was, I will say it was stressful. It's also really fun in hindsight, being like every day we had a new random thing to figure out. So it never got boring, like today we have to figure out how to time these insane giant puffs of fire that are coming out of every corner of the ring safely, right? So it was definitely not normal movie making for me, where it's just like two people talk today. I would have killed for that after that week.
Sounds like it was a very interesting shoot.
It was really fun and intense.
How much of it was practical versus special versus CGI, special effects, visual effects?
The answer is it was a pretty solid mix of CGI and practical, but always practical first in terms of Kareem Hussein, the DP, had done Firewalker before, or sorry, Firestarter, Firewalker. He'd done Firestarter before, the more recent version, and so he was very experienced with doing a lot of firework. He'd also done the sequel to Orphan, which had a lot of fireworks. So he was adamant that we have practical fire wherever possible, and obviously some other lighting tricks to like mimic fire and sell the illusion. But I mean, in reality, as fire grows in our story, you have to have CGI, and we pushed it as far as we could. And the original version of the fire match in the script, people were like, you can't do that. It's just too much. So, and I was sad about that, but I will say the effects team, led by Jason Parody, we don't want for anything. Like, they gave us big fire.
No, it looks, all the fire specifically looks great compared to other films where you can tell that it's very fake. Like, I knew, like, when the guy's on fire and running around, I'm like, that's a guy in a suit on fire. So I was just wondering how much of it was real versus
a lot for that part of the fight. It's all real. I mean, the fire does grow later, and luckily, I had a very talented filmmaker friend, Akash Sherman, do our VFX, and he's someone who, I was very blessed in this film to have a lot of friends that I worked with and friends who really cared. So no one's just like, okay, here's that fire shot. They're like, no, I'm looking at every ember. I'm making sure this matches the last one. It wasn't a big film, but people threw their back into it.
And you can definitely see that. One thing I wanted to ask, you kind of leave it open at the end. I love the ending. I had a shit-eating grin on my face.
Good.
The entire
very nervous how people will react to the ending, because it can divide audiences.
Yeah,
we'll see. I like the ending. Yeah.
So you leave it a little bit open. Do you have any ideas for like a follow-up, or is this a one and done?
I have ideas for a sequel. I think it's bad luck to talk about it too much because this could come out and people are like, this movie stinks. So, but if there is a good reaction to it, I would love to do a sequel. But time will tell, I guess.
Definitely.
Well, fingers crossed that people love it as much as we did. We would be remiss, since we're talking to you, if we didn't ask, is there a Wolf Cop 3 coming?
I got asked that surprisingly a lot. There's no immediate plans. My kind of stock answer is never say never. We shot the first two back to back, and it was really intense doing it that way. But there's been a bit of time now, and I love the character. I love the core team involved in making it. So I'm not against it, but it's not on it's not in my queue right now. I have a few other projects, but you know how it is. Like, things happen. People show up with money or the right terms, and then suddenly you're doing it. So, but I've got other things on the go. Yeah.
All right. Well, if we can scrounge together some money, we'll throw it to you for Wolf Cop 3.
Just take it. I'm all in.
Because I was watching it yesterday, and my wife was looking at her phone, and she happened to look up during the sex scene in the jail, and she's just like, "What the fuck are you watching?"
Yeah, and that's usually the reaction to that movie. I have a soft spot for both those movies. I like the first one more than the second one, but I think the second one probably delivers more of the stupidity that people might have felt was lacking in the first one. So they're fun. Again, I would do more. I love those guys.
Amazing. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us. Congratulations on the film. It was great. And follow up, no follow up, whatever you have in mind for the next project, we're here. We're there. We're all in.
We're there.
I really appreciate that, guys. That makes me feel good because it's really weird and hard making movies like this. So your enthusiasm makes me feel like, okay, maybe we didn't waste our time.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.